The flag weighed nothing, but Colonel Henry Hank Thorne felt its weight in every bone of his 76-year-old body. He stood at Terminal C, Gate 23, Logan International Airport, watching planes carve through the gray Boston morning. Rain streaked the windows, turning the world into an impressionist painting. His flight to Atlanta left in 40 minutes. Charlie's funeral was in 6 hours. He'd promised to be there, promised to deliver the letter that now burned like a coal in his breast pocket. The terminal buzzed with pre-dawn energy. Salesmen gulped coffee while pecking at laptops. A young mother wrestled with twin toddlers who discovered the joy of running in opposite directions. A businessman argued into his phone about quarterly projections. Life moving forward, oblivious to the weight of promises made in jungle mud 40 years ago. Next, Hank shuffled forward, his bad hip, courtesy of shrapnel in '69, protesting each step. He placed the triangular folded flag on the counter with the same care he'd used handling ordnance in Vietnam. The TSA agent, young enough to be his granddaughter, didn't look up from her screen. ID. He slid his military identification across the scarred counter. The photo showed a younger man with the same steel-gray eyes but fewer lines, fewer ghosts. Colonel's insignia gleamed on the uniform collar. Issued 1987, a lifetime ago. This expired in 1992. Yes, ma'am, I know. Do you have current identification? That's all I carry. Her fingers paused on the keyboard, perfectly manicured nails hovering over keys. For the first time, she actually looked at him, took in the pressed khakis, the polished shoes, the ramrod posture that decades couldn't quite break. Sir, I need valid identification to process. That's all I've got. Driver's license, passport. Lost my license 2 years ago. Didn't renew it. Don't drive anymore. Never needed a passport. Never left the country after I came home. She glanced at the flag, the letter visible in his pocket, back to his face. Something flickered in her eyes. Sympathy, maybe. But regulations were regulations. I'm sorry, sir. Without proper ID, I can't allow you to board. Hank waited. He'd learned in Vietnam that sometimes silence accomplished more than words. The agent shifted uncomfortably, glanced at her supervisor's station, back to him. Is there someone you could call? Someone who could fax current identification? No, ma'am. Sir, I want to help, but I understand. You have a job to do. He picked up the flag with the same careful reverence he'd shown placing it down. No scene, no demands, no pulling rank that no longer existed. Just an old soldier who knew when a battle was lost. The bench by the windows was molded plastic, designed by someone who'd never had to sit longer than 5 minutes. Hank lowered himself carefully, bad hip screaming, worse knee joining the chorus. He placed the flag on his lap, the letter beside it. Through the rain-blurred glass, planes lifted into gray sky, carrying people to their destinations, their obligations, their promises. 6 hours to Charlie's funeral, 3 states away. No way to make it now. He'd survived Tet, survived 18 months in the Hanoi Hilton, survived the guilt of coming home when better men didn't. But he couldn't survive TSA regulations in a world that had moved past old soldiers and their outdated identification. The terminal noise washed over him. Announcements in 3 languages, children crying, cell phones chirping, the eternal CNN. Loop on overhead monitors. Nobody noticed the old man with the flag. Just another traveler benched by the system. 41 years since he'd made the promise. He and Charlie hunkered in a foxhole during the siege of Khe Sanh, monsoon rain turning everything to mud. If I don't make it, Charlie had said, matter of fact, as if discussing the weather, look after Barbara and the kid. You'll make it. But if I don't, then yeah, I'll look after them. And if you don't make it, then you do the same for Helen. They'd shaken on it, hands slick with rain and fear and youth too stupid to understand mortality. They'd both made it home, physically at least. Charlie went back to Detroit, took a job at Ford, raised 3 kids. Hank stayed in, Made colonel. Lost Helen to cancer in Ujro 3. They'd kept in touch. Christmas cards, occasional phone calls, a reunion or two when they could still pretend the past was past. But promises made in foxholes don't have expiration dates. Direct letter in his pocket was Charlie's final one, written 2 weeks ago when the doctors stopped talking about treatment and started talking about comfort. "Give this to Michael at my funeral," he'd written in shaky script. "And Hank, bring the flag, the one from my dad. You'll know what to do." Hank knew. The flag wasn't from Charlie's dad. It was from Staff Sergeant Ramirez, who died saving Charlie's ES squad in '68. Charlie had carried it ever since, but couldn't bring himself to contact Ramirez's family. Survivor's guilt was like that, sharp enough to cut, not clean enough to heal. "Excuse me," the voice pulled Hank from his reverie. A young man stood before him, mid-20s, clean-cut, nervous energy that reminded Hank of second lieutenants before their first firefight. "You're Colonel Thorne." Not a question. Hank studied the kid's face. Something familiar in the eyes, the set of the jaw. Used to be. "Who's asking?" "Ethan Marshall." "My father was Danny Marshall. 2nd Platoon. Alpha Company." The kid's face lit up like Christmas morning. "You remember." "I remember them all." "The boy. Man, really. But they all looked like boys to Hank now. Sat uninvited. His hands moved when he talked, just like Danny's had. Dad's told me about Cu-Chi, about that night, how you went back for him, carried him 2 miles through hostile territory." Your father exaggerates. 3 AK rounds in your shoulder. Dad unconscious from blood loss. 2 miles through VC-controlled jungle. At night. Alone. Hank said nothing. Some stories didn't need confirmation or denial. They just were. "Why are you sitting here?" Ethan asked. "I mean, just sitting?" "Expired ID. Can't board. Gonna miss a funeral." "That's insane. You're Colonel Thorne. You're nobody. Just an old man with outdated paperwork trying to keep a promise." Ethan stood abruptly, phone already in hand. "This is bullshit. Sorry, sir, but it is." "Watch your language." "Right. Sorry, but still." He was typing furiously. Posted it. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Medal of Honor recipient denied boarding due to expired ID. Can't attend funeral of fellow veteran. "I don't have a Medal of Honor. Dad says you should. Says the paperwork got lost. Like a lot of paperwork from that war. Your dad talks too much." "Yeah, he does. Especially about you." Within minutes, phones throughout the terminal began buzzing. Passengers glanced up from screens, looked around with newfound interest. A middle-aged woman in business attire approached hesitantly. "Excuse?" "Me. Are you the colonel? The one who can't board?" Hank nodded, wishing Ethan had kept his phone in his pocket. "My husband's military. Retired Navy. This is wrong." She turned to address others in the gate area. "This man served our country, and now he can't attend his friend's funeral because of bureaucracy?" A businessman in a $1,000 suit stood up from the first-class waiting area. "I'll give him my seat. Transfer my ticket." "Doesn't work that." "Way!" the gate agent called out, stress evident in her voice. "He needs valid ID. Federal regulations." "Then I'm not flying either." The businessman sat back down, folding his arms. A pilot emerged from the jet bridge, drawn by the commotion. 4 stripes on his shoulders, graying at the temples. "What's going on here?" Ethan stepped forward before Hank could stop him. "Sir, Colonel Thorne needs to get to Atlanta for a military funeral. He has expired military ID. They won't let him board." The pilot, Captain Rodriguez, according to his name tag, studied Hank with practiced eyes. Something passed between them, the silent communication of men who'd worn uniforms that mattered. "Colonel? Frank Rodriguez, Air Force, 85 to 05. "Captain?" Hank acknowledged with a slight nod. "Let me see what I can do." Rodriguez disappeared into the jet bridge. He returned minutes later with his co-pilot and 3 flight attendants. They formed a semicircle around the gate desk. "Ma'am," Rodriguez addressed the increasingly flustered agent. If Colonel Thorne doesn't fly, neither do we. Captain, you can't. Actually, I can. FAA regulations allow pilots to refuse to fly if they believe conditions compromise safety. I believe leaving a veteran behind would compromise my ability to focus on my duties. That's not what that regulation means. Are you a pilot? No? Then let me interpret pilot regulations. The terminal had gone quiet. Dozens of passengers watching the drama unfold. More people drifted over from other gates, drawn by the gathering crowd. The gate agent grabbed her radio. I need a supervisor. At gate 23, immediately. The wait felt eternal. Hank sat still, the eye of a storm he'd never intended to create. People shared his story in hushed tones. Vietnam veteran, denied boarding, military funeral. The crowd grew. A TSA manager pushed through. Older, harried, clearly pulled from something important. What's the situation here? Rodriguez stepped forward. Colonel Thorne needs to attend a military funeral in Atlanta. His military ID is expired, but he's clearly who he says he is. We're requesting an exception. Exceptions compromise security protocols. I'll vouch for him. Rodriguez straightened to full height. 20 years Air Force before going commercial. I know a real soldier when I see one. As will I. The co-pilot stepped forward. And me. A flight attendant. Me too. Another passenger, then another. The chorus grew. Not just words, but people standing, literally taking positions. The businessman from first class. The mother with twins. The arguing salesman, phone forgotten. Veterans identifying themselves. Civilians who just thought it was right. The manager looked trapped between regulations and a public relations nightmare. I need to make calls. Make them fast, Rodriguez said. We have a schedule, and a funeral that won't wait. I'll wait, announced the businessman, however long it takes. So will I, said the mother, wrestling a toddler onto her hip. One by one. The entire flight manifest declared their intention to wait. The manager retreated, cell phone pressed to his ear. Hank sat frozen, overwhelmed by the unexpected support. He'd faced NVA regulars with less anxiety than this display of solidarity. You. Okay, Colonel? Ethan asked quietly. Don't understand why. Because it's right. Because promises matter. Because you carried my dad through hell, and now it's our turn. 20 minutes crawled past. Passengers shared coffee, stories, phone numbers. Veterans found each other, compared service records, units, deployments. The young mother discovered the businessman had twins the same age. The terminal became a temporary community, united by the simplest of causes, getting one old soldier to a funeral. The manager returned, face flushed. Colonel Thorne, we're making a one-time exception. You'll fly as an honored guest of the airline. The terminal exploded. Applause, cheers, a few tears. Hank struggled to his feet, legs unsteady from sitting, from age, from emotion. This isn't necessary. Yes, it is. Ethan gripped his elbow. Dad would kick my ass if I let you miss this. They processed him through security like visiting royalty. No lines, no hassle. Just nods, salutes, and an occasional, thank you for your service. At the gate, Captain Rodriguez waited personally. Colonel, it's an honor. Your seat's in first class. I bought coach, not anymore. Airline's decision. As Hank boarded, the entire terminal applauded again. He clutched the flag and letter, vision blurring. Not from age, from something else. Something he hadn't felt in years. The flight attendants fussed over him constantly. Passengers stopped to shake his hand. Captain Rodriguez announced his presence over the intercom, triggering another round of applause. Landing in Atlanta was smooth. A gate agent waited with a wheelchair he didn't need but couldn't refuse. A driver held a sign with his name. Courtesy car to the cemetery, no charge. Riverside National Cemetery stretched in perfect rows under Georgia pine. Hank arrived as the service began, slipped quietly into the back. Charlie's casket sat draped in flag, honor guard in dress blues. The 21-gun salute cracked across the morning air. Taps played, each note hanging in humid air. Michael, Charlie's oldest, 40 now with kids of his own, received the official flag. Then Hank walked forward. "Mr. Thorne?" Michael's eyes widened. "Dad said you might. I didn't think. He said you had trouble getting around. Made a promise." Hank handed over the letter. "Your father wanted you to have this." Michael's hands shook as he opened it. Tears came halfway through. "Did you read it?" "No. That's between you and him. He says you saved his life. More than once. We saved each other. That's what brothers do." Hank held out the second flag, Ramirez's flag. "This belongs with your father too. Ask him about it someday, when you're ready." Michael clutched both flags, confused but accepting. Hank turned to go, but a hand caught his arm. "Please, stay for the reception." Hank almost refused. Then he saw Ethan Marshall approaching. "Colonel, you made it. Your dad here?" "Couldn't travel. Heart's not great. But he wanted me to give you this." A photograph. Danny Marshall and Hank, Firebase Alpha, 1968. Young faces, old eyes, arms around each other's shoulders. "Keep it," Hank said. "You sure?" "Got my own memories. The reception was in the church fellowship hall. Quiet conversations, shared stories, covered dishes that appeared from nowhere. Hank sat with Charlie's family, finally part of their grief, instead of watching from outside. "Uncle Hank?" A young woman approached, Sarah, Charlie's daughter. "Daddy talked about you all the time. Said you were the bravest man he ever knew." Your daddy was confused. "No, he wasn't." She sat beside him. "He said bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared and doing what's right anyway." Evening fell, Ethan drove him to a hotel. That was something today, at the airport. People overreacted. No, they reacted exactly right. "You know what my dad says about you?" Hank waited. "Says you never left anyone behind. Ever. Today, nobody left you behind either." The hotel was modest, but clean. Ethan helped him check in, made sure he had everything needed. "Flight home's not till tomorrow afternoon. Want company for breakfast?" That'd be nice. Alone, finally, Hank sat on the bed. The flag was with Charlie's family now. The letter delivered. Promise kept. His phone, the flip phone Ethan mocked gently, showed dozens of missed calls. He ignored them all except one. "Hank?" His daughter's voice, worried. "I saw the news. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, sweetheart. Dad, what happened today? All those people just needed to get to a funeral. It was more than that. They stood up for you. All of them. Mom would have been so proud. Your mother always saw better in people than there was. No, Dad. She saw what was really there. Just like those people today saw who you really are." After she hung up, Hank lay, back fully clothed. Tomorrow he'd fly home, deal with whatever attention the internet had created. Answer questions he didn't want to answer. But tonight, Charlie was buried with full honors. His son had his father's last words. The flag, both flags, were where they belonged, and somewhere in America, in an airport terminal in Boston, people who'd never met him had stood up for an old soldier with an expired ID. Not because he was a hero, not for glory or recognition, but because promises mattered, because honor wasn't outdated, because sometimes the right thing was worth fighting for. In the morning, Ethan knocked at 8 sharp. They found a diner that served real coffee and didn't ask questions. "So what now?" Ethan asked over eggs and bacon. "Home. Back to routine." "That's it? What else is there?" "Dad wants you to visit. Says you haven't been by in 5 years. Your father exaggerates. Tuesday work?" "He's got a whole box of photos from Vietnam. Never showed them to anyone but family," Hank considered. "Tuesday works." They ate in comfortable silence. Then Ethan said, "You know this is everywhere online? You're trending." "Don't know what that I means you're famous, means people care, means what happened yesterday mattered. Just wanted to deliver a letter. And you did, but you also reminded people that honor isn't dead. That promises count, that we're still capable of standing together. The flight home was surreal. Gate agents knew his name. TSA waved him through with salutes. His expired ID suddenly valid everywhere. Captain Rodriguez was flying this route too. Greeted him like an old friend. Colonel, welcome aboard. Captain. First class again. Don't argue. As they lifted off, Hank watched Atlanta fade below. Somewhere down there, Charlie rested under Georgia Clay. His son had a letter 40 years in the making. A promise was kept. Sir? The flight attendant smiled. Can I get you anything? I'm good. He was. For the first time in recent memory, he actually was. The flag weighed nothing, but Hank Thorne felt lighter than air, not because he'd delivered it. Because in delivering it, he'd discovered something he'd thought lost with Helen, with Vietnam, with youth. The knowledge that people still cared, still honored old promises, still stood for something beyond themselves. His phone buzzed. Text. From an unknown number. Colonel Thorne, my name is Maria Ramirez. I think you knew my grandfather. Could we talk? Hank stared at the message. After 40 years, Ramirez's flag had found its way home. But apparently, the story wasn't finished. He typed slowly, unused to texting. Yes, let's talk. Another promise to keep. Another ghost to lay to rest. Another chance to discover that honor, like love, never really dies. It just waits for someone to carry it forward. The plane climbed into clear sky. Below, America spread out in miniature. Cities and farms, rivers and roads, millions of people living their lives. Good people, Hank realized. People who'd stand up when it mattered. He closed his eyes, Helen's voice echoing across the years. You always see the worst in people, Hank. Try seeing the best for once. I'm trying, Helen, he whispered. I'm finally trying. The flag weighed. Nothing. But its delivery had lifted everything. He was going home. Different than he'd left. Better. All because of an expired ID and people who refused to let that be the end of the story. Sometimes the smallest battles revealed the biggest truths. And sometimes promises kept 40 years late were right on time.